I collapsed at work and was rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. The test revealed that I had a disease and I had to undergo emergency surgery right away. Feeling anxious, I contacted my husband. I'm about to undergo surgery. I think I'll be hospitalized for about a week to monitor my progress after surgery. I thought he would rush to the hospital, but instead he said with a hint of pleasure, "A week, huh? Well, you'll be safe in the hospital. This is a good opportunity for you to take a break." Suspicion rose within me and I decided to check his credit card statements. Turns out he took advantage of my long-term hospitalization to go on a trip abroad with his mistress. I was livid. I'll show him what I've got. After the surgery, I showed a remarkable recovery and began to prepare for my revenge on Tom. I can't wait to see the look on his face when he returns from the trip. My name is Nancy. Tom and I have been married for 10 years. We are in a phase where we've become indifferent towards each other, almost as if we were part of the furniture. But I guess that's what marriage after 10 years is like. Since we don't have any kids, we both work at the same pace as when we were single and money is not a concern. I believed we would continue to live out our retirement peacefully. However, for a few years now, Tom has been acting strange. He never used to care about his appearance, but now he's suddenly concerned about how he looks. "Hey, when did you get such fancy clothes?" When I asked, Tom replied in an annoyed tone, "What? Does it matter? I sometimes meet people from work outside the office." Not only that, he started buying clothes that younger people would wear and even started going to a trendy hair salon. "I'm going to the salon for a bit." As he was about to leave, I couldn't help but stop him. "Hey, where have you been getting your hair done lately? You used to go to the $10 barbershop near the train station." To which he replied in a grumpy tone, "It's none of your business how I spend my money. You go to the salon, don't you?" "I'm not complaining. I just noticed that you're dressing up a lot lately. Maybe you just don't care enough about how you look." He was usually working late hours or out town on business trips, so I didn't pay much attention to when he came home. But lately, I noticed that when he came home late, he always smelled of perfume. "Hey, this suit? It smells a bit. Kind of like a woman's perfume." When I interrupted him with that, Tom was visibly flustered. "Oh, well, on the way home, there was a woman next to me on the crowded subway who was wearing a pretty strong perfume. Maybe that's what you're smelling." His excuse seemed fishy. His actions pointed towards one thing. Clearly, they were signs of infidelity. When I checked our bank account, our savings had been rapidly decreasing for the past few years. He was probably spending it on his mistress. Who is she? How should I find out the truth? And if he was indeed cheating, what should I do? As I thought about these things on my own, I gradually lost my appetite and became depressed. Then one day at work, I collapsed. "Nancy, are you all right? I'm calling an ambulance now." As I was losing consciousness, I could hear the distant voice of my colleague. The next time I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital bed. I was probably under stress because of Tom. The doctor who examined me recommended that I be hospitalized for further tests, since I hadn't expected to stay overnight. I didn't have anything prepared and immediately called Tom. "Hello, Tom. I collapsed at work today and was taken to the hospital by ambulance." "An ambulance? What are you doing? Are you in hospital now?" "Yes, they want me to stay overnight for tests." "It's nothing serious, is it?" "I think it's just stress." I couldn't say outright that it was because of Tom's affair, so I was vague with my words. Then Tom, sounding relieved, said this. "Well, you've scared me there, so you're not coming home tonight, huh?" "Yes, the test results will come out tomorrow." "All right, I got it. The hospital will provide everything you need, right? I don't need to come, do I?" "Huh. Well, I guess it should be okay. But you'll come to hear the test results tomorrow, right?" "Huh. Do you need me there?" "I'm no expert. I won't understand anything they say." I don't want to hear the results alone." As I yelled that out, Tom reluctantly agreed to come to the hospital with me. The next day, when I heard the test results with my husband, I couldn't believe my ears. The doctor told me they are signs of a stroke, so we need to perform surgery immediately. When I looked at Tom next to me, he seemed just as surprised. Tom pondered for a moment, then asked the doctor, "So that means I can't go home today, right?" "Correct. We'd like you to stay in the hospital today, and we'll perform the surgery either tomorrow or the day after." "And how long will it take until she can be discharged?" "Well, it depends on your recovery after surgery, but probably about a week." "A week? I see. Okay." As we left the consultation room with heavy hearts, Tom said, "I'll make a phone call," and walked away. I could hear him talking with someone in the distance. She won't be around for a week. This is an opportunity. Might as well. After finishing his call, Tom came back and hastily started getting ready to leave. I hurriedly tried to hold him back. Wait. Wait a minute. You're leaving already? I wanted to talk more." "Talk? About what?" "We've heard everything from the doctor, haven't we? We just have to trust the hospital now. Seems like a good place, so don't worry. You should get some rest. Good luck with the surgery." He left those cheerful words for me, who stood there stunned, and Tom briskly left. Even though I called to him the time of the surgery, he never answered. From that point, Tom never showed up at the hospital, and I had to go through the surgery alone, filled with anxiety. The surgery was successful, but days passed without a word from Tom, and he never came to the hospital. Our house phone went straight to voicemail, and his cell phone was unreachable. That reminded me of that phone call. With a bad feeling, I checked Tom's credit card statement online. The statement showed a purchase record of 2 airplane tickets, to Hawaii, no less. While I was anxiously staying in the hospital alone, Tom was enjoying a trip abroad with his mistress. But that wasn't all. Tens of thousands of dollars on designer brands and dining in high-end restaurants. He'd been spending an amount of money that I'd never dreamed of using, and doing so quite extravagantly. Furthermore, I was able to trace Tom and his mistress's accommodations from the credit card statement, and from there, find her social media. The mistress's social media was chock full of pictures of her and Tom on dates. She must have been sure she wouldn't get caught. Facing all the evidence, my anger towards Tom bubbled to the surface. I couldn't forgive him. I would retaliate. After surgery, as I lay in my hospital bed, all I could think about was how to exact revenge on Tom. Eventually, I came up with a plan. And after that, I could feel an energy surging from within me that I didn't even recognize. Before the surgery, I was nearly crushed with worry. But now my anger towards Tom had transformed into power. The only thing on my mind is getting better as soon as possible so that I can carry out my revenge. Even the doctor, who came to check on my post-operative progress, was surprised. "Well, this is impressive. It's rare to see someone recover at this speed. Something happened?" With a faint smile, I answered. "There's something I need to do, so I wanted to get discharged as soon as possible." So, with a recovery speed that could only be described as miraculous, I was discharged earlier than expected. I didn't tell my husband that my discharge date was moved up and went home alone. There's no point in contacting him if it's just going to go to voicemail anyway. Besides, there's plenty I need to do from here on out. There's no time to rest. I began meticulously preparing for my revenge. The first time Tom contacted me on my cell phone was the day I was originally scheduled to be discharged. "Nancy, I just went to the hospital, and they said you've already been discharged." "Yes, my post-operative progress was good, so I got discharged earlier. You could have let me know. Seems like your phone was turned off all this while." "Oh, right. I forgot to charge it. My bad. Okay, I'll head home now." An hour later, Tom called me again. "Hey, Nancy, what the hell is going on?" "What do you mean?" "Don't play dumb. Our house is gone." "Oh, you've noticed." I don't need it anymore, so I've cleared the land and put it up for sale. It's in a great location, so I bet it will sell quickly. What the hell are you talking about? What do you mean you don't need it anymore? That house is our marital property, isn't it? How dare you think you can just sell it off like that? I didn't expect to hear the phrase, our marital property, out of your mouth. What do you mean by that? You know, the money in our joint bank account? That's also our marital property, right? I've known for a while now that you've been spending it on your own. Well, there are various circumstances related to my work, you know. Related to work, huh? So going on an overseas trip with your mistress is also part of your job? How? How did you find out about that? You've been careless, haven't you? I can check the credit card statements too, you know. I know about the overseas trip tickets, the accommodation, the restaurants you've been to, and your women's luxury items. I know everything you've spent on your mistress. As I raised my voice, Tom fell silent. I said again, you're the one who started misusing our marital property, aren't you? So I'll be taking the money from the sale of the house to cover what you've given to your mistress so far and for compensation. Compensation? But what about our living situation after selling the house? Our... Don't tell me you're trying to keep living together with me. There's no way I'm not going to divorce a husband who goes on a romantic trip while his wife is in the hospital. Divorce? Wait, it was just a fling. I never wanted to divorce you. You spend more than $10,000 on a fling. If that's the case, I want even less to do with such an idiot. Plus, you prioritized a trip with your mistress over being by your wife's side during emergency surgery. That makes me less than a fling to you. There's no way I could live like this any longer. That's not true. You're my precious wife. Do you think I can believe you now? No matter what you say, I don't want to see your face anymore. I'll be living freely in a new home, so you can do as you like. Go to your mistress or something. Are you serious? You'll regret it. What I regret is the 10 years of married life I've spent with you. You've forgotten that I provided for you these 10 years, haven't you? Provided for me? Don't joke around. The savings you squandered included the money I earned from working, didn't it? Don't get high and mighty after spending it all. Don't you have any sentimentality? Is this how you treat a husband you've been with for years? That's rich coming from you. I'm just throwing your own words back at you. As a kindness, I've put your stuff at the dump, so if you don't hurry, the garbage collectors will take it. That's a lie, right? Damn it. Don't screw with me. I'm done with you. With that, Tom hung up in a hurry. He's probably rushing to the dump right now. When I threw out the large items, I placed the divorce papers on top. Tom should be noticing the divorce papers by now. After saying all that, he's bound to agree to our divorce. While hoping that he would never contact me again, I was about to start a new life. But within a month, I got a call from Tom again. What now? I don't have anything more to discuss with you. With that, I tried to hang up, but I could hear Tom's screaming voice from the other end. Wait, don't hang up. We haven't filed for divorce yet. I'm still your husband. Listen to your husband. We haven't filed for divorce. His unexpected words left me with no choice but to listen to what Tom had to say. What do you mean we haven't filed for divorce yet? Well, after that, I decided to live with her. I've decided to observe a little longer before getting a divorce and remarrying. It was the right decision. Why? She spends money like water. Plus, she says things like, if we're getting married, I want us to be a homemaker. Even if we have a ton of savings, it won't be enough if I marry her. I knew that even before you two started living together. I'm surprised you didn't notice her spending habits after you've showered her with gifts. Then Tom said, as if he was impressed. I see, Nancy, you're solid. I'm certain from what you just said, you're the only one who can be my wife. Excuse me? Nancy, let's start over. You've just been sick. It must be scary to be alone, right? Is this guy an idiot? He won't understand unless I give it to him straight. I took a deep breath and raised my voice. Scary? How dare you say that? The most scared I've ever been was when I was alone in the hospital on the day of my surgery. Even when I was trembling with fear before the surgery, even when I was enduring the pain after the surgery, you weren't there for me. I'm really sorry about that. I wasn't thinking straight. It's not just that time, is it? After all this time cheating on me, how can you say that? A lot has happened, but I can't do without you. You feel the same way, don't you? That's why you've been with me for 10 years, isn't it? Stop talking nonsense. I'm certain that I can't continue with you after what happened. I can't even imagine spending my life with someone I can't build a relationship of trust with. So you don't want to give it another try? No, not at all. What about my feelings? My affection for you disappeared a long time ago. I still have feelings for you as a family member, and I thought we could spend the rest of our lives thanking each other. You've trampled on those feelings. Tom fell silent, and I left him with these final words. But I do have one thing to thank you for. Once I found out you were cheating, I was so angry that I felt like I couldn't afford to be sick. I decided to level that house and sell it before you returned from your cheating trip. What the hell is that? Thanks to you, I was able to recover surprisingly fast. Even the hospital doctors were shocked. It seems like my anger towards you became the motivation to keep going. I'll thank you for that. Nancy, think this is over? No. Go to hell with your mistress. Goodbye. Without listening to Tom's reply, I hung up the phone and immediately contacted my lawyer. I couldn't stand postponing the divorce any longer. I intended to fight this legally. I had saved all the evidence of his infidelity and was ready to submit to my lawyer. I was sure the divorce proceedings and the demand for compensation for emotional distress would go smoothly. If I left everything to my lawyer, there would be no need for me to contact Tom anymore. To ensure that I wouldn't get calls from him, I even changed my cell phone number. I doubted he would dare come to my workplace. Even if he did, I had informed my colleagues about the situation. Since Tom's bad reputation was already well known in the office, I believed they would alert me immediately if they saw him and avoid any direct encounters. Everything proceeded exactly as I planned. Tom, after hearing from the lawyer, obediently agreed to the divorce and accepted the demand for emotional distress compensation. As for his mistress, apparently, she had resigned to paying the compensation since she couldn't deny their affair. It seemed she was all ready to remarry Tom once our divorce was finalized, and she insisted on paying her part of the compensation from Tom's savings, treating it as if it belonged to both of them. At this rate, his savings would be drained in no time. He and his mistress seemed set to continue their irresponsible relationship, and I could see that Tom would be in a tough time for a while. Yet, I had no sympathy for him at all. He brought this on himself by cheating with a money-grabbing woman. On the other hand, I managed to rent an apartment of the same size as before, using the money from selling our house and the compensation from the divorce. The fruitless 10 years I spent with Tom won't come back, but now I can live my life without being controlled by him. If I ever remarry, I would make sure it is with someone who values trust. I made up my mind to. I am a 38-year-old male and was for almost 9 years married to my wife, Joni. I work for a large national bank in one of their Atlanta banks as a loan officer. I also have a substantial investment income as well. Joni and I live comfortably on my income. Joni is almost 7 years younger than I am. At this point in our marriage, she was doing some volunteer work. However, Joni always had my dinner on the table and was at home ready to greet me with a smile. We tried for almost 2 years to have a child, but we later learned I was not able to be a father. We started to research the process of artificial insemination, and I was excited about having a child. Several days before we were going to leave to go to the clinic, I found Joni in our bedroom crying. I tried to comfort her, but she continued to cry. I left her asleep a while later and walked outside to check the mail and decided to drive into the office and get some paperwork done. When I got home, Joni was not there. No food, no note, nothing. I thought maybe she just took a drive and forgot about the time. So, I called and had a pizza delivered. By 9 p.m., I was concerned and started calling her friends and family. Nobody had heard anything from her. I tried to sleep that night but was unable to. The next morning, I called my job and asked for a day off. I had already decided to go file a missing person report when, at about 11 a.m., Joni came home. I am not a hothead. I just asked for an explanation but was ignored as she walked into the bedroom and got into the shower. Joni simply was refusing to discuss the situation, and when I tried to get her to talk, I got the "you don't own me" reply. We did not take that trip to the fertility clinic, and for the next 2 weeks I was living in a state of shock at how Joni had changed. I found that my job helped clear my mind. I was getting close to the end of my rope. By the end of that second week, I had made up my mind to go stay with my brother and just avoid Joni. My brother and I talked for several hours, and he gave me the name and phone number of a great private investigator that worked in the Atlanta area. So, I contacted this private investigator, paid him his fee, and went back home. When I got there, Joni was cold and indifferent. I remember thinking, who is this stranger? Joni took over the master bedroom, so I slept in one of our other bedrooms. Then, by chance, I got a phone call from a doctor's office asking to speak to Joni. I said I was her husband and could deliver the message. All they said was, have her call them. I hit redial and learned that the call came from an OBGYN clinic. I sat down and wrote a note for Joni to call the doctor's office. Then grabbed a beer and went to sit out on my patio wondering what the heck was going on. Fast forward, and it is almost a month later. Joni had asked me to come back to the master bedroom, but honestly, I stayed where I was. Then one day at work, the private investigator called me. He said we needed to meet. I asked, was it good or bad? He said, it's bad, very bad. We met about 2 hours later, and he laid the entire thing out for me. Joni was sleeping with one of the local high school football coaches. He had video of them kissing and her head in his lap. Then I started to see what was happening. Joni was pregnant, and her AP must have been the father. The private investigator said he needed to stay on the job for a bit longer because he wanted to follow the man some more to make sure he was not sleeping with another woman. And he told me to get tested as soon as possible. He was not charging me anymore. By this time, I was no longer angry. What I felt was more like relief. Georgia is a state where you can use adultery as grounds for the divorce. I had Joni dead to rights. I made an appointment with my attorney, and he gave me a referral to one of the best divorce attorneys in Atlanta. I made an appointment and gave him all the videos and photos. He just smiled and asked me what I wanted to do. I told him I was done. I guess my inability to father a child might have driven her into another man's arms. The attorney stood up and said, BS, this was not my fault. He said the paperwork will be ready to file within a week. I paid him and left. By this time, the private investigator had identified Joni's AP's wife. She was a nurse at a local doctor's office. I took all my videos and photos and had them in an envelope. I walked into the clinic and asked for the wife. When she came out, I noticed she looked older than I was and did not look good. I asked her if she had about 10 minutes to talk. It was almost as she was expecting me. She invited me back to a small break room and we talked for a few minutes. The videos were on DVDs, but I had enough photos to show her the truth. She said that this was the end of her marriage, and I said it was the end of mine also. I called my attorney and he said he could handle both cases. We both agreed to hold off confrontations until all the divorces were served. What was funny was we were the primary earners in the marriages. She made almost double what he made and Joni did not have a job. So, I went to work on the day the papers were due to be served. All the process server told me was he expected to serve her around 2 p.m. About 20 minutes after 2, I got a call from Joni crying. How could you do this? I hung up. I also was told by my attorney under no circumstances to move out of the home. By the time I got home, Joni had left. I got a call from the AP's wife. He had also been served that day and was upset. Joni was from Asheville, North Carolina, and was on her way there. The next day, I packed all her things and boxed them in my garage. By this time, I had taken steps to disable all of Joni's plastic and remove her ability to get cash out of an ATM. I had Joni on 2 divorce grounds under Georgia law. She had been impregnated by her AP and she had committed adultery. The AP's wife, Carol, and I would talk some along the way. Her husband was fighting her on everything. She was fighting depression, and to be honest, by this time, so was I. Then one day, Joni came back and tried to get in the house. She had discovered I had changed the locks and disabled the garage door opener. She called me demanding to be let inside. I called my attorney and he called the sheriff's office, and they got there a few minutes after I did. Then my attorney also arrived and told the deputies who he was and that Joni had abandoned the marital home. She broke down crying and really started to sob. I told her I would pay for a rental truck to load her things in, but she was not living in my home anymore. By this time, Carol had made her husband leave their home. Joni told me she was not interested in my help and would get her things. Shot me the bird, got in her car, and left. She did hire an attorney who scheduled a meeting to discuss the divorce. He first wanted to know about marriage counseling and possible reconciliation. I shot that down. Then finally, I learned where Joni had gone that day. She had driven almost 200 miles away to get an abortion. The more she talked, the sicker I got. The attorney made an offer of an uncontested divorce if I gave her the house and half of my investments and kept her on my health insurance. My attorney simply said, "We will see you in court." I caught Carol a few days later, and she said her husband finally gave up and basically gave up all claims to everything but his clothes, most of the electronics in the house, and both his car and Honda motorcycle. I later learned he quit working for that school system and got a job teaching in South Georgia. I had 2 meetings with my attorney, and he told me getting the house will be tough. Joni has no job, and most judges won't put them out on the streets. Otherwise, he felt good that I would walk away with no support and all my investments intact. When the day of our hearing came, I guess somebody was looking after me because I saw Carol in the courtroom. My attorney laid out my case and took a few minutes showing the judge the video and photos. The private investigator was there to testify. He took them. Here is where things got a bit weird. Joni told the judge I was physically and mentally abusive. I knew this was BS, but it concerned my attorney enough that he asked for a continuance, and the judge granted it while my attorney was speaking to Joni's attorney. I spoke to Carol. I asked her if she was still talking to her ex. He was still in the Atlanta area. She said she had a phone number. Something inside me was telling me to speak to Joni's AP. It was almost like I was being driven to do it. I called him and we spoke for a moment, and he surprised me by agreeing to go have a short chat. The first thing he said was, "I am ashamed of what I did. My actions destroyed 2 homes." I asked him if Joni had ever said anything to him about me being abusive. He looked at me with a surprised look, then said, "Joni had said many times that I did not do anything to deserve being cheated on like that, and that one day she will have to go to confession." I asked him if he would be willing to testify to those conversations. He said it was the least he could do. So the day comes for our final hearing. My attorney told him to stay out in the hallway, and he advised her attorney. He had a rebuttal witness. A funny thing happened. Joni decided to drop everything and leave. The judge said, "Not so fast. You made some serious allegations against your husband. And as a judge, I have an obligation to hear them out." There was some back and forth between the judge, the attorney, and Joni. The short of it was Joni admitted to committing perjury. When it was done, The judge called a recess for an hour and said he would return with his findings. When he came back, he asked Joni's attorney to explain to him why he should not hold her in contempt for perjury. The attorney got Joni to stand up to apologize, but the judge pointed to me and said, "He is the one you should apologize to." The judge asked me if Joni's car was paid off. I said, yes, it was. He then asked me if Joni had any revolving credit balances. I said, not any that I know of. Then the judge took off his glasses and leaned back for a moment. He looked at me and said he was granting all my requests. I got the house and I was able to keep my investments. I was also authorized to remove Joni from my health insurance on the day my divorce was final. Then he looked at Joni and told her to get her butt out of his courtroom. Sadly, this was not the end of my story with Joni. She moved back to Asheville and after a trip to Charlotte, was driving drunk and crashed her car. The North Carolina Highway Patrol estimated she was traveling at almost 100 miles per hour when her car left the highway. I am not a religious man. If there is any truth to the Catholic Church's teachings, I honestly hope Joni did get to that confession. This accident happened almost a week after our divorce was final. I did not have to pay for anything involved. Joni left all our wedding photos at the house. The day my divorce was final, I burned them all. I will never get married again. One Joni in my life is one too many. Well, in my opinion, it goes to show you cheating doesn't pay. And sometimes you might get lucky with the state that you live in. Even if you are married for decades, if your spouse cheats, he or she may lose out on a bunch of financial perks. It's sad to call it perks, but if you think about it, that's exactly what it is. Financial perks. I, male 30, live with my wife, 30. We both work full-time jobs and have 3 kids, a toddler and 2 young grammar school children. I used to work from home with flexible hours, but I've been offered a promotion that requires me to go to work in person. The pay increase is significant, so my wife and I agreed I should take the promotion and hire a part-time nanny for our kids. I got in touch with a nanny agency, and they matched us with someone who lives locally. They only told us her first name, which was a common name anyway, but for the sake of storytelling, we'll say her name's Sarah. I spoke to Sarah on the phone, and she seemed really nice. We arranged the day for her to come over and meet my wife and the kids and for us to show her around the house. When the day came around and we met her, it turned out that my wife already knew Sarah. It was really awkward. I was surprised to find out how they knew each other afterward. My wife told me that back when she was in high school, her boyfriend at the time had cheated on her with Sarah, who was in her class. She wasn't enthusiastic about it, but my wife didn't seem to have a problem with Sarah being our nanny. Our kids love her, and she has lots of experience and is available when we need her. After a couple of weeks with no issues, my oldest 2 kids came to me and said they didn't want Sarah to come back. I asked them why, and they said that she was evil. I asked why they thought she was evil, and our middle child started crying and said that Sarah was mean and wanted to hurt mommy. I talked to my wife in private, and at first she had no idea what the kids were even talking about and said that it must be because of something Sarah did. When I pressed it, my wife admitted that she told the kids that Sarah was evil. She said she knew it was a ridiculous plan, but she was hoping I'd fire her. My wife asked me to fire the nanny because their history makes her uncomfortable. I asked why it wasn't an issue before. My wife said she just needed to think about it, and she's decided that Sarah has to go. I told my wife that we could find another nanny, but until then there was no reason to get rid of Sarah and that she was out of line trying to weaponize the kids against her when Sarah was no danger to them. My wife disagreed and said we needed to fire Sarah ASAP and hire a temporary babysitter until we could find another nanny. She said that she wasn't weaponizing the kids, she was just setting boundaries. This turned into a really heated argument, and I called my wife insecure and controlling and told her she needed to go to therapy. My wife said I'm being inconsiderate of her feelings and need to put myself in her shoes. This was one of our biggest arguments in a very long time, and I just want a neutral opinion on whether I was wrong. Not the idiot, and her behavior disturbs me. I can't imagine causing my children to fear for their safety or their mother's safety because of my own insecurities from high school. I mean, the manipulation and abusive behavior is disturbing. If the truth is not corrected for those kids, they could end up believing daddy hired an evil person to get rid of mommy. I think firing her because of the wife's behavior and issues could lead to legal ramifications, slander, and wrongful termination. Yeah, the wife should have said no to begin with. I don't buy the trial period. If it was really about having a change of heart, why go to the trouble of lying to your kids about the nanny and hope she would be fired? To me, this seems deliberate. She's getting revenge against the girl who cheated with her ex. I bet she hoped her husband wouldn't find out about the lie and then give Sarah a bad review. I absolutely agree here. She wanted to hire Sarah just to fire her later to get some petty revenge for a childhood grudge, and she was okay with needlessly frightening her own children to do this. She used her children as tools of manipulation to get what she wanted all over something that happened in high school. I have legitimate concerns for your children, Opie. It was so easy for your wife to use them, like she didn't even have to think long or hard about it, and she did it with no remorse, which would lead me to believe this hasn't happened maybe just once or twice before, but is a tactic your wife uses whenever she feels it would help her get her way. Just know, Opie, if you do get divorced, she will 100% manipulate the kids against you too. My father passed away when I, male 26, was 22, and my sister, 29, was 25. With this in mind, after getting engaged, my sister asked me if I would do the honor of walking her down the aisle. At first, I was elated, and I so enthusiastically agreed, but things quickly changed after my sister realized my wife was pregnant. In the preceding months, my sister made my wife's life a nightmare, who initially had been one of her bridesmaids, but was relatively recently informed that she would not be one. Originally, it was fine, but as my wife's pregnancy became visible, my sister would at times taunt her and make rude comments towards her. During her bachelorette party just a few days ago, she even yelled at her because she was ruining her fun by being too distracting and not drinking. I kid you not, the ensuing onslaught resulted in my wife being removed as one of her bridesmaids. She even left my pregnant wife on the side of the road as my sister made her way to a party planned, in part, by my wife, and in a limousine paid for by me. This, coupled with the fact that she had asked me recently to ask my wife to stay at home because her pregnancy will take attention away from her on her special day, just broke me. So, I called her up yesterday after I found out what she had said to my wife, and I told her that I would not be attending the wedding and that she'd have to find someone else to walk her down the aisle. That's when the calls began. Everyone's been calling me, telling me that I'm overreacting and intentionally trying to sabotage her wedding. She even called to yell at me and told me she had always hated that which while referring to my wife. I told her to screw off. My mother's been extremely sympathetic toward my wife, and she agrees with me. My wife has been crying over this, and she's received an onslaught of messages. I blocked all my relatives, except my mother, and I'm planning a trip to Disneyland for my wife and me on the day of my sister's wedding, as I already booked the days off from work, and Disney's where my wife and I went on our first date when we lived in LA. This news has started its own onslaught. Nevertheless, am I the idiot? Whoa. Whoa. Not the idiot, but has your sister been like this before? This sounds like it's beyond bridezilla. I give the groom 3 years, tops. Totally agree. Your sister sabotaged her wedding. I'm surprised that the other bridesmaids didn't pull out and that the groom still intends to marry her. Maybe they are birds of a feather. Of course, he may not have been told the truth about why you pulled out. who leaves a pregnant woman on the side of the road and blames her for being a party pooper because she will not drink. A distraction for showing her bump? The whole wedding party on the bride's side are such idiots for allowing this bullying too. There's a line where even the bride has to be told to stop. Frankly, after what you described, I would only be on speaking terms with her once she apologizes big time to your spouse. And anyone who takes the sister's side after hearing the full story can screw off as well. You stood up for your wife when it was easier to go along to get along. Good job. Y'all have fun at Disneyland. She doesn't deserve either of you at the wedding. I have a bit of a dilemma. My 27th female grandmother died 4 years ago when she got engaged to my grandfather. He gave her a 21-carat gold ring with diamonds and a ruby in the center. That ring was eventually passed to my dad when he prepared to propose to my mom. As far as I know, she never took the ring off, and the ring was returned to my dad when my mom passed. Recently, my partner and I have 3 years have been talking about getting engaged. I asked my dad about the ring, and he agreed that if I ever got engaged, I would inherit the ring. Well, last night I told my boyfriend about the ring and how it was passed on. He said his daughter, Tween, who's from a previous relationship, would love to inherit it eventually. I explained that she wouldn't be getting the ring since she's not my bio daughter, and that if my baby wants it when she's older, she will inherit it. This caused a massive argument in which my partner called me a witch and said that I was treating his daughter differently because she's not blood. Things might be different if I actually had a relationship with her, but I don't. I've only met her once in person and honestly don't know her that well. She has no attachment to the ring, but my daughter will since it'll be her grandmother's and great-grandmother's ring. I made a point of saying to him if he proposed to me with it, I'd return it to my dad for safekeeping. So, am I the idiot? So, you're gonna marry someone who called you a witch? Pay attention, Opie. I've been married for longer than you've been alive, and my husband has never once called me a witch, even during our worst arguments. Run. She won't run. She's gonna marry someone she's been with for 3 years, but has only met his child once, even though they have a child together. Neither one of them are ready for marriage. This is a mistake. This relationship has red flags all over it. Really, Opie? Have you been with someone for 3 years and met his daughter once? Are you saying he and you have no relationship with his daughter, and he thinks she should inherit your mother's ring? That's delusional. The ring is yours. You don't owe him a thing. And why did you sit there and let him call you names? Even if you had a relationship with his daughter, she's not entitled to that ring. If it was me, that conversation with my boyfriend would be the last one we ever had. Seriously, he thinks that his daughter, who he apparently doesn't even raise, has any rights to it. It would be your ring regardless. Don't give it to him to propose to you. If it remains yours 100% unattached, then he can't dictate who receives it or when. I'm not even sure you should get close to that point if he's calling you names over this. I promise you that marrying this man will be one of your biggest regrets. My sister's staying with us while her divorce processes. It's been a pretty big adjustment for everyone, but for some weird reason, she's butting heads with my kids particularly. She's their aunt, and I agree they should respect her, but I don't like how she acts like an authority figure to them. My youngest is a toddler, so if she sees him doing something he isn't supposed to be doing, it's helpful for her to correct him at the moment, but I don't want her making her own rules. As for our teenager, I'd prefer if she just came and talked to us. My husband and I have 2 cars. We allow our son to drive in any car in the driveway unless we tell him we need the car at a certain time. My sister kept telling him he needed to ask before taking the car, and they even argued about it a few times. My husband and I told her to stop, but she was worried she might need the car and it wouldn't be there. We told her to stop, or we wouldn't let her borrow our cars at all. She also keeps telling our toddler to pick up his toys while he's still playing with them. We don't make him pick up his toys until he's done playing, unless it's bedtime or we need to go somewhere. He gets frustrated when she tells him to do things he knows he doesn't have to do, and then he yells at her, and she tells him not to yell at adults. Again, we told her to stop and leave the room if she's so unhappy about a situation. Last night, my son was in the kitchen making himself something to eat after practice, and she told him to eat a vegetable. He didn't respond, and she went to the fridge and grabbed a bag of carrots. She tried to dump them in the pot, but he pulled the pot off the stove, and the carrots went everywhere. She was upset at the mess and food waste. He asked her if she would clean up the carrots because they were in his way. She told him off for being disrespectful and said he needed to clean it because it was his fault. He said she was being a crazy witch, and then they started yelling at each other. I ran in, and they shouted over each other to tell me what had happened. I asked my sister to leave so I could clean up and my son could finish cooking. She was mad I didn't make him clean it and said I was a bad mom. I told her that wasn't for her to say, and that if she wanted to parent our kids, she should have had some because mine don't need another mother. She walked away, and my son said he'd clean the kitchen, so I went to talk to her. She was crying and asked why we all hated her so much. I know my sister and ex-husband did plan on having kids before things broke down in their relationship. I feel bad for throwing that in her face. It wasn't my intention, but I got so frustrated. Am I a horrible sister? Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Trying to rule the roost in someone else's house and bossing the kids around is inappropriate. She's a guest, not an extra parent. If she was this boundary challenged in her own marriage, a small wonder her husband is divorcing her. Your sister clearly has some major control issues. I know a lot of people tend to control things they wouldn't ordinarily when they feel out of control. It's possible the divorce has her in this headspace, but that still doesn't make it right. Sit down with her and reaffirm your love for her, but draw the boundary that she cannot discipline your kids or give them orders. Encourage her to talk to a therapist if that seems too hard for her. Agreed. She feels so out of control in her own life that she's over-controlling to stop herself from feeling so powerless. And the carrot incident? Really? Offering some carrots is okay. Forcing it into someone's food is really not okay. She needs to learn some boundaries with OP's family. If not, she shouldn't be allowed in OP's house, which is supposed to be a safe space for kids who are the rightful occupants. I have a tween daughter with my ex-husband. After our divorce, his sister moved in with him to help him raise our daughter. My ex-sister-in-law and I never really got along. She can't have any kids, and she was always jealous of me because she loves kids. Now she acts as if she's my daughter's mom. When my daughter was younger, she called her mom for a while, but I corrected her and taught her to say, "on" instead. Last night, my daughter came out of her room in the middle of the night and asked for her iPad. We take it away at night to make sure she doesn't play with it instead of sleeping. I asked why, and she said she had a bad dream and wanted to talk to her mom. I was devastated. I told her I was her mom and I'd help her to go to sleep. But she insisted on talking to her aunt, so we allowed it. I didn't say anything to my daughter, but this morning I called my ex-sister-in-law and told her she needs to stop acting like my daughter's mom. She's not her mom. I am. And if she tries to do this again, I'll take them to court and get more custody because I think that they're alienating my child. She called me an idiot and a jealous witch for trying to ruin their relationship and basically implied that I couldn't do anything about it and she wasn't gonna change things. Am I the idiot for trying to change things? Edit. I get her every other weekend and her dad gets her the rest of the time. This custody arrangement has been for the past 9 years. I chose a custody agreement that was better for her and I tried to spend as much time with her as I could. I think we have a pretty good relationship, but I bet it could be better if my ex-sister-in-law stopped acting like her mom. I try to at least have a few free hours to spend with her, but it's never enough for her. I'm sick of, "my auntie's a better mom, she would play with me," comments. Her aunt is a stay-at-home mom and nanny, so she has a lot of free time, but I don't. Children don't call their nanny's mom. What else am I supposed to do? Definitely not the idiot. Go to court. Under no circumstances should another woman lead a child to think she's her mom. This woman seems mentally unwell to allow your daughter to call her mom. Serious question. Would the courts actually intervene in something like what the kid calls her aunt? Like, how would they enforce that? This is messy and not good for the child. On the one hand, the child trusts the aunt/mom and sees them as mom. On the other hand, it could be considered alienation. What is best for the child? Opie has a daughter every other weekend while the father has primary custody. Aunt is the primary caretaker and primary mother figure in this girl's life. It just sounds like the kid is closer to her aunt than Opie and prefers her aunt to be her mother figure. Just because Opie gave birth doesn't mean she's a good mother. For all we know, she wasn't in her daughter's life all that much and is just jealous that another woman has stepped up as a proper mother figure. Opie only sees her own daughter 4 days a month, and she doesn't want to fight for custody, but her jealousy over another woman taking better care of her daughter suddenly makes her want to fight for custody. I don't think Opie is faultless here. I feel like if Opie were a man, we'd be calling her a deadbeat for only spending a few hours every other week with their kid and saying it's the best they can do. You are the idiot, Opie. And this story is called PI Exposes Cheating Wife. I am a 50-year-old businessman that owns and operates a retail business in my hometown. Except for the 4 years in the U.S. Marines, I have never left this area. My last year in the Marine Corps, I met and married Paula. After my discharge, Paula moved with me back to my hometown. I then started working for the man that taught me this business, and about 15 years later, sold it to me. The first few years, Paula was also working at a local bank as a bank teller. Even though I had 2 large loans, both of us did okay. We were paying for our home, and I alone was paying off the loan I used to buy the business. During the years, Paula and I were married. She gave us 2 beautiful children. I really came to love Paula. She was a fantastic cook, and even though she worked 40 hours a week, always kept the house clean, and my dinner was always on the table. After my daughter was about 10 years old, Paula started having some medical issues and had to have a hysterectomy. For some reason, this caused Paula to go into a deep depression. As I look back at that time, I can see Paula was never the same after that. Paula also started to get angry a lot. She would jump on my son and daughter for nothing. I was at work when my son, then 13, called me. He stopped by a friend's house for about 30 minutes one day, and his sister got worried about him. So, she called her mother, then Paula jumped on my son later after she got home from the bank. I am an avid outdoorsman. I love to hunt and fish. I also love to flip tin, looking for small things like lizards and snakes. One day, I got a bit careless, and a large copperhead was about a foot from where my hand was, and he bit me on my finger. I was close to my car, and the man that was with me drove me to the hospital. It was determined that I received either a dry bite or a very small dose of venom was injected. I was given some medication and told to watch my finger for swelling. This happened on a Sunday afternoon. I was not able to locate Paula. When I told her what happened later, she exploded. I was just numb and decided to drive about 15 miles to the interstate, where some nice hotels were, and checked in. The next day, I checked out and went directly to work. When I got there, my son called and said Paula had left just after I did and had not come back home. He and my daughter were still at home. Because it was a Monday, my kids did not have the money to pay for their meal cards at school. I went directly home, got both my kids, and took care of the money. By this time, I was no longer numb, I was pissed. I drove to the bank and discovered Paula was not at work. I had to go back to my business, because it was Monday and there were some things that had to be done my two employees could not do. So I went on about my day and after a while pushed Paula out of my mind. I closed my business and headed home. I did not see Paula's car in the driveway, but the kids were at home. Then finally at about 8 p.m., Paula drove up. She spoke to the kids and headed toward our home office, and I just slammed the door in her face. To her credit, Paula knew I was not in a good state of mind. I had already fed the kids and myself, so Paula made a sandwich and went to our bedroom. I slept in the guest bedroom, and that next morning, I noticed Paula was giving me wide space. Never once did she say I am sorry. My kids to this day tell me she did not apologize to them either. Then one day, about a week later, Paula suggested we separate and wanted me to move out. I told her I was not moving out and that if anyone moved, it would be her. That was the day I drove into Richmond, Virginia, and found the family law attorney. She listened to my story and gave me some advice. First was to record everything while you are alone with her. Then speak to the kids and make sure they are not being traumatized. She also told me that she had a high suspicion Paula was cheating on me. Then she said she had a private investigator who was a retired federal agent and was very good at his job. She told me what her firm's billing rates were, and I was okay with it. Then she told me the private investigator will call me at my workplace, and he is going to need some information about my wife. I met with him and had the information the attorney said he would need. By this time, Paula did start staying with a friend from work, but made it clear that was her house and that she was going to hire an attorney to get me out of it. So, for the next 3 weeks, I woke up every morning wondering if that night would be my last night in the house. I got up, fed my kids, and got them off to school. Then one day, my attorney called me and said the private investigator had found what we needed, and she wanted me to come by her office. So, we made an appointment for 2 days later. As luck would have it, I was served divorce papers. So, I took the papers to the attorney and she laughed a bit and said, "My wife has a huge surprise coming." I see the photos the private investigator took of Paula with her AP. To this day, I have no idea what he did for a living or where he worked. I just knew his name was Kurt. There were photos of him and Paula walking into hotels. Somehow, this private investigator even got a copy of the hotel registration where they registered as a married couple. To this day, I have no idea how they pulled that one off because most hotels I know demand ID from all guests. So, Paula's attorney asked for and got an emergency hearing to have me forcefully removed from the house. This was before Paula or the attorney knew what my attorney had. That private investigator had gone to the kids' school and spoke to their teachers as well as the kids themselves. My attorney also had all the photos too. My attorney asked Paula's attorney for a short private chat about 15 minutes before our case was called. When they walked out of that room, Paula's attorney did not look happy and she told Paula they needed to talk as soon as possible because she did not want to go into court today. After they spoke, all the smirk was gone from Paula's face. She went from boss to beggar in a matter of a minute, asked me for a chance to get back together. The attorney said she wanted to stop the case from going forward, but my attorney said no, she would object to any motions before the court to do it. She assured the other attorney that a divorce was happening. So, the hearing came and Paula's attorney said a resolution had been worked out and the judge said, "Okay, talk to me about this resolution." I was sitting about 2 feet from my attorney and could hear her very lightly humming the funeral march as her hand covered her mouth. Paula's attorney said that new information has come in that renders the request moot. Here is what my attorney said happened. This judge was known as a judge that will hang a man by his privates and divorces. This judge would have loved to force me out of my home. So, the judge wanted to know what that information was and if they were going to ask for a dismissal of the case. As Paula's attorney was talking to her, My attorney stood up and said several sentences in Latin, and the judge said, "Okay," and told both of us that his clerk will let the attorneys know when the final hearing will be. When I got home, Paula was already there. She was on her knees begging me to forgive her and let's go to marriage counseling for the sake of the kids. I refused. Also told her to get the hell out of my house, that I would burn it to the ground before her cheating ass would ever stay there again. We later learned the date of the hearing. However, my attorney had to file for and was granted an order for Paula to stay out of my home and business. One thing about my attorney, she knows her stuff and does due diligence when she asks for a court order. This judge granted it because Paula ignored the summons to court. Paula during the hearing was only asking for a chance to be a wife again. She stated she had broken it off with her AP and just wanted to have her family back again. When the time came for my attorney to present her case, the first person called was the private investigator. She asked him where he was the night before this hearing. He said, observing my wife with the same man she had been seeing. This private investigator, when he takes a photo, always lays that day's newspaper in the photo. He had a photo of them kissing with the Richmond paper from the day before in clear sight. The judge told Paula he was granting the divorce on grounds of her adultery and was awarding her nothing. The kids had already told the judge who they wanted to live with. I had to settle with Paula for her part of the house. I also got a few bucks for child support that I honestly just gave to the kids. My world today is my business and my kids. I do have a wonderful girlfriend. Paula finally moved back to her hometown in California. I allowed the kids to fly out there to see her during the summer and on either Christmas or Thanksgiving. Today they are grown. I honestly don't know what happened to Paula that made her blow up our marriage. Last year, my daughter did one of those DNA things and through it determined she was in fact mine. My kids live in the same hometown I have lived in all my life. I asked both if they held any hostility toward me for not taking their mom back. My son said he did at first, but now knows I did what was best for all three of us. My wife, 30, comes from a humble background. Her father is an alcoholic, so her mother worked hard all her life to make ends meet. I, 30, am from a more privileged background. All in family are PhDs. We were different, but when we met in 19, I was in love. She was my first serious relationship. For the first 6 years, we had a long-distance relationship as I was studying abroad. I moved back and we moved in together. For years later, we tied the knot. After about 1 year of marriage, I found out she had been having an affair with her boss at a major marketing firm with a senior partner. I also found out that before the marriage, she had a one-night stand with someone, and she also met him for some dates. She also maybe got pregnant and asked this one-night stand for some cash. She says she had an affair with her boss because she enjoyed the perks and was getting on the fast track for promotion. He gave her expensive gifts, attention, and time. This started around our wedding, where the pressure of our wedding costs was weighing on her as I was basically taking care of it all. She says she tried to end things, but he threatened to fire her and also beat her. Then said he would commit suicide. The physical violence was frequent with her boss. Her boss came to our home often and comes to many of our social engagements. She always told me that her boss doesn't have friends and she was just getting some brownie points. I bought this. I am such a fool. I even suggested to her to go with her boss to a business meeting outside the city because he is a terrible driver and could do with some company. What's crazy about this is that I am actually way richer than her boss. I have given her every single ounce of freedom. She can take money. No questions asked. She is not enjoying work. She can work at our business. Although I always encouraged her to be independent. I had actually helped her get this job. I paid for her college and basically all her expenses since the start. Best part, I encouraged her to go and talk to management as it would help her. She went and said hi to this guy because of that. She meant everything to me. She says she was happy in our marriage. I certainly was. My faith in her was so enormous that I ignored every sign. Our sex life was great. She says she never did this for sex. I have lost my future. I worked my ass off to grow our business after the COVID impact, and here she was accepting luxury gifts that I consider pocket change. Although I'm a simple man, I rarely spend on myself and I spend time on clean water projects in Africa, but it's true. I didn't buy things for her mostly because I thought she can buy whatever she wants with her card. And also because I was working all the time. Also, her fling mentioned above from a prior marriage. She texted him recently and had been having many flirtatious messages. She used to cook for her boss. She messaged him things like she wanted to be with him at night. And she did message him once or twice expressing concerns that she thought he was leaving her. After D-Day, our worlds have collapsed. She has quit her job and says she has become suicidal. She swears she tried to get out, but couldn't. And she hates this guy. She is asking for forgiveness. If I can take her back, I can't trust her or maybe anyone ever again. Update 1 D-Day. She came home after one of her office parties. She was completely drunk at 3 in the morning. She started mumbling. She wanted kids. I asked her who dropped her off. It was her boss. Something snapped in me and checked her phone. Found out her workplace. This company she works for is awful. I just Googled and found out that I'm 2018. They laid off all senior management due to workplace harassment. And then someone in 2022 filed a case saying no action on her complaint. AP. He is in his mid-50s and fat, quite an ugly dude. Honestly, she has brought him to our house many times. She has taken me to his house many times. She has introduced him to all our friends. She always said it was because he is lonely and doesn't have friends. The extent of his visits were so much that even when I thought something was fishy, I would think who could be that stupid. My father just told me after D-Day that he had told my mother that I was probably approving of this open marriage. He just couldn't believe it that I didn't suspect anything. Her response after D-Day: accepted divorce, accepted to file lawsuit for workplace harassment. Quit her job, though she needs money and is suicidal to a point that her family doesn't even let her use the bathroom with the door closed. She is remorseful and her family is too. She apologizes to me on an hourly basis, asks for forgiveness and a chance to prove she can change. She is asking me what she can do to make up for this. However, due to the magnitude of her betrayal, I am not considering any form of reconciliation, but it's hard on me to stay firm. Clues during the 1-year-long affair: I have to admit, she has asked for psychiatric help and has told me she has severe depression. I never understood the gravity of this and procrastinated on it. She has Googled on topics of how to end things. She has asked me multiple times to help her find a job. Again, I never understood the severity, so she definitely was going through something, but at the same time, she has sent texts to him like she is missing him. It's not that she had an escape in her AP. She was having a full-blown toxic relationship parallel to ours. Parallel lives. If you read her messages to him and then to me, you will see night and day with him. It's like a stupid teenager fighting and passionate and crazy with me. It's like calm, happy, and a loving wife. I am telling you, we had a happy marriage. This is what makes this so devastating. At one point, she is messaging him frantically to come pick her up. And she is messaging me at the same time, reminding me of some chores and that we have still not formally applied for a marriage license. In my opinion, and I am not a therapist, he just needs to cut his losses. If this man doesn't have any children with this woman, he needs to get out and fast. What additional signs do you need that this woman is a complete disaster? She had a one-night stand and continued to go out with her one-night stand and possibly gotten pregnant. And now she is messing around with her boss. Man, come on. Women like this are a complete waste of time